I'm pleased to introduce Stuart McCormick from Honeywell, Suresh Patel from Microsoft, and John Sullivan from SAP. Stuart has worked in building controls, security, and IT industries for 17 years and currently leads digital services for Honeywell Building Solutions. His current focus is on developing and deploying a wide range of IoT products in the Americas and around the world designed to reduce energy consumption, improve building comfort conditions, and optimize the occupant experience. Suresh works for Microsoft as a cloud solution architect on the data and AI team in the SoCal region. He's passionate about data and AI technologies. He works to empower enterprises to make data-driven decisions as a trusted strategic advisor. John Sullivan is Director of Innovation at SAP. His work has spanned from tax reform to labor discrimination identification to naval warfare tactics. His favorite works in prediction are guided by how do we get people, processes, and products to do what we want while hiding in the illusion of choice. They'll be presenting a panel titled Using IoT to Drive Productivity. Please join me in welcoming them.
Number one. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our session here. So first of all, what I'd like to do is to talk about productivity. And I think it's so interesting when we look at publications and things on the web. Everybody says productivity, and then they immediately go talk about efficiency, which is totally on the other side of the spectrum. One is about output, and the other one is about quality. And so if we look right here, X over Y. I think I always like to come out here and ask questions. So we, the whole gentleman for dinner, we have great Toblerone and all kinds of nut bars to answer. So there are only 3 ways to make money in the world. Who wants to give me the first one?
Invest.
Not invest.
What
Steve Jobs do?
Create value.
Something out of nothing, right? Cool. You ready to catch?
Yeah.
All right, here you go. Bingo. All right. Anybody want to give me the next 2? Create something out of nothing. Go.
Reduce cost.
Hey, just for trying. There we go. Next.
Cost. Reduce cost.
Improve the experience?
All right, I'll give you the next 2 real quick. Take somebody else's idea and make it better, right? Or take somebody else's idea to somewhere it does not exist. If you're thinking of going to business school, you don't have to go anymore because I just told you everything you need to know to go to business school. That's it. So when we look at the last 2, where it hadn't been before, making it better, that's right here. That's why. That's not what we're talking about. Productivity is output, which is X. How do we create something brand new or expand the capabilities of people? And you're going to hear some really good things today from Stuart. He works at Honeywell, how they've actually improved the efficiency of systems, but improve the productivity of individuals so they can do their job better, quicker, faster, those types of metrics. And Suresh is going to bring that same type of story from a different point of view that he has looking at cloud systems and that type. And I'll just jump in at will from that level. So I really want to bring this back to another discussion here real quick before I turn it over to him. There's a great book out there called On the Origin of Species. Who wrote that?
Darwin.
Who said that over here? There you go. Ready? Bingo. All right. And what was if you could sum up that book in a couple of words, how would you do it?
Survival of the fittest.
What?
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. Great.
Or I guess survival of the fittest. Ooh.
Actually, Survival of the Fittest was not in his book.
That's right.
It took to the 5th edition before it made it into that book. And so if you had to substitute a word for fittest, what would you use? Survival of the what? Anybody?
Strongest.
Who said strongest?
Oh, me. Chocolate.
Participation award, because that's not correct. Anybody else want to give me another one?
Smartest.
Smartest. Participation award, but not correct.
Survival.
Oh, shoot! Terrible. Is there an attorney in the house? Sorry about that.
Productive.
Survival the most productive.
Actually not. Can you hold that a minute so I need to do a visual here. And actually I can talk loud enough. Are y'all recording this? Probably not, so never mind. When he talks about survival of the fittest, he is talking about survival of things that fit best together. It's not the things that are strongest, not the things that are smartest, it's not the things that are most capable. And that's where we really have to look at productivity, is how do we design things that fit best together. We see great ideas of things that can do all these wonderful things. I mean, I love the self-driving car. I have one. It's called a bus, a train, and an airplane. You're just talking about a private one of those, because that's the way I see it. And so that's the way we want to get to look at those types of things. So I'm going to turn it over to Stuart and let him go.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so as John said, we need to really try and focus on what can we do with the Internet of Things. What can we do with all this data? So over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a massive improvement in how we can get data from systems, how we can do analytics on it. But there's also been many manual attempts over the last 10 to 15 years in various industries about doing this type of data analytics with, instead of cloud processing and computing, with experts looking through data, providing reports, etc. And there's been a big challenge with that. Is they all come down to finding insights into and actionable items, but they're not freeing up the productivity of the people that can actually go on and make the improvements. So over the last 10 years, there's been services all over the world that give you a monthly report at the end of the month, tell you how to make your car more effective, how you make your building more effective, but people don't have the time, the expertise, and the capabilities to actually make good in them. So one of the key things for where we need to then go with the Internet of Things is also not looking at how we get more insights into that data, but then how do we also then free up the time for the people that are working in those industries to actually respond to them. So in my industry, in the building controls systems, we look after facilities all over the world, ranging from skyscrapers to hospitals to airports, and we have tens of thousands of technicians all out there doing these jobs. And the data analytics and IoT has given us much better ability to find more faults faster. But what we also are now starting to really see is the big change is how are we now changing what they're doing in the day-to-day process? How can we change their existing day-to-day tasks and checks so that we can then free up much more time to actually respond to this data? So what we found as we've been actually changing that day-to-day work, that day-to-day tasking, is we can really start driving much more results through from this, because data analytics will help us find a much broader range of problems, a much deeper insight into the building. And by freeing up the labour at the same time and making those people more productive, we can then make much more improvements than we ever could previously. So it's actually, the key thing for us now is actually turning this data, this insights, into real actionable business cases. So in our industries, for example, we're seeing where we can free up the technicians' space and time to actually start responding to some of these faults and actually fixing them in the same time as they would previously have to actually check certain individual pieces of equipment. But at the same time, we're also getting ahead of the curve for when faults and issues occur within buildings and in industries. And that's actually freeing up a whole host of other resources across companies. So when you have data analytics running to identify a problem before the end user discovers the problem, then that leads into so many other areas of the building. So traditionally speaking, if we were to find ourselves too warm in this facility, we would phone up the university's help desk, and they would then dispatch out a technician to go and investigate what was the cause, what was going on with this. What we're doing with data analytics is finding that root cause way before this room's actually got too hot. You can identify the stuck cooling valve, you can identify the broken actuator and damper, all using data analytics. And if you get that to the people that can make good on that promise earlier as possible, then you're also making sure that your day-to-day work isn't being affected because you're actually working more productive, so you're not feeling too hot in a lecture hall at the end of the day when you're starting to lose concentration. You're also dramatically reducing the load of the help desks and the facilities management teams, so therefore you can reallocate those people to go and do other types of work. And at the same time, you're then also starting to bring all the other gains, such as energy savings. You're making sure equipment isn't running unnecessarily, so you're expanding the life expectancy of that equipment. So one of the key things when it comes to looking at productivity is piecing together all of those key parts of the business case. Because once you do that, then you've got a much better return on investment and what you can get from that. So with that, I'm just going to turn over to Suresh to talk a bit about some of the edge analytics.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Wood. So, when this topic was suggested, I'm from Microsoft, so we have internally Office 365, and we call it as Productivity Suite. So how I'm going to take that and relate it to this IoT, right? So that was something that came into my mind. But if you have gone into Azure IoT, there are pre-configured solutions too. Like how it improves the productivity. Staying on the topic, is there are remote monitoring, predictive maintenance. So essentially, one of the customers that I work with, essentially they are in the energy creation industry. So like a non-renewable energy, they use like huge big windmill, and then the windmills, where are they placed? Next to the company? No, it is on the faraway places, in the mountains and things like that. These are all remote places. So what they want to do is they want to get the health of the windmill, make sure that before it fails, they can identify it. So essentially, if you look at, we are making the things smarter, right? So we actually make everything if you ask a horse how a dog look like, it's going to think it's a horse is a dog. So same way, we are comfortable when things speak our language. So we make this inanimate world animate. So we give them intelligence, especially the edge analytics. Essentially, improves the productivity in a sense like we are in the big data world, right? So we don't know what kind of data would give the insights that Stuart was talking about, John was talking about, and make an actionable, insights into the decisions into that. So this edge analytics essentially can reduce the noise. It can filter the information that are not necessary and only send the required information. So 85% of the things are not ready to talk to the internet, but this the edge analytics can give you the intelligence and bring the cloud intelligence into the the on-prem or wherever the local devices is, right? So essentially, that's what I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to go to John.
Yeah. So I don't know if I need this or not. So you heard very good examples of how things go and get up in productivity. You heard Stuart talk about air conditioning systems and all the things you see with Honeywell, but it really focuses in their technicians and the fact that they really now are doing the right things right. That's really what we want to get to. How many times have you had somebody go out there and they fix something and it's not what it needed to be fixed, and it gets to the next person in line, the next person in line? That's the way we really want to drive up that side of productivity. And I appreciate what Suresh and what Stuart are saying, but I really want to just give you a story real quick, because I tell stories, and it's something that you can remember forever. So back in 1986, there was a guy named Gary Kasparov. Who was he? Anybody know? Who said that over here? You've already got one? Ready? All right. I got to sit down. I didn't like it. There you are. Cool. So in 1986, he is invited to a room to challenge all the PC makers. They have 30 PCs with 30 games of chess. 7 of them are named after him. He sits down and makes a move on every game. He goes around there and plays all 30 computers. At the end of the day, what's the score? Anybody know? Take a guess.
30-0.
Who said 30-0? Bingo. You got it. He beats them all. There you are. Cool. So IBM gets in on the fray here, and they invest a bunch of money in something called Deep Blue 10 years later. And Gary Kasparov plays Deep Blue, and what's the score of that one? Who wins? Let me ask that one.
It's a draw. No, the guy.
Who said Kasparov? You did. Yay! See? Even the people who are going. Ready? Awesome. IBM comes back and puts $20 million into Deep Blue, and then who wins?
Deep Blue.
Deep Blue. Who said Deep Blue?
And how long did that take?
You already got one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Here you go. Ready?
Was that over 2 years or 10 years?
2 years for that one on the second time. So we could say that's the end of the story, but Kasparov actually goes out, and he now holds chess tournaments where he invites people to bring whatever computer they want to, phones, you take all the devices you want to in there. And you have ELO masters, which are the guys who are the chess champions. You have amateurs, like us, who go in there. Now here's the real big question. Who wins those champions? The ELO masters with computers or the amateurs with computers? What'd you say?
Amateur with computers.
Ready? Why?
Because money.
The question of why comes down to the The ELO masters always got to a point in the game where they thought they knew better and stopped consulting the computer. The amateurs always consulted the computer. And the end of the day talks specifically about what Suresh was just mentioning here, about how these things move forward, and the fact that given technology is equal, people, you may have smart people and you may have average people. But if you have a superior process versus an inferior process, then that will always win. And if you don't believe that, look at the two things between Cactus 1549, Sully's landing on the Hudson, and go look at Flight 447, Air France's going down in the Atlantic. Those were, I won't go into the story if we don't have time, but that's how you get in productivity, and the layout of that thing is clearly how one crashes and one succeeds, and it all boils down to one thing. When they hit the birds, what's the first thing Sullivan says? And it's not, oh crap. Anybody don't remember that? Come on. Who saw the movie? He says something, he says, my aircraft. A human took control and got all the input from the plane. I guess it's chocolate orange.
He's
for
saying
you.
I have control of my aircraft.
My aircraft.
Okay.
The guys on Flight 447, they argued all the way to the ground because they were both trying to control the plane, and that killed everybody on board. All right, back to Stuart. Where we are on time.
We got on time.
All right, cool.
Wait, but just to end that chess story, so the end result is the newer generation that is more comfortable with technology is defaulting to the computer's recommendation, and the more expert chess players were saying, oh, I've been in this move before, I know what to do, I don't need to look to what my computer's recommending.
It's just not just the computer technology, it's not just the younger people. We know that computers can make us better. And that's where we need to make sure we can consider all alternatives and don't just say, I'm on the golf course now and I'm just going to rip it. No, the safe play is take the 7-iron out and lay up. And that's where we need to take that kind of guidance. I mean, I don't know about y'all, some of y'all are students, but some of you work in industry. I mean, where I work, if we let somebody die on the job, our MBOs are shot. You let 2 people die on the job because of an accident or safety reading, it's shot for the next year too. We want to make people safe. And the way we do that is we have these people, processes, and things in place to aid productivity to keep those things happening for us. We make sure that X and Y remain the same. They move forward. People don't get injured. All right. Cool.
Yeah, so leading on from what John's saying there, lots of the focus over the last 10 years on what we're doing with big data has all been about automation. It's been about getting the analytics, finding the faults and issues. But what we've got to really appreciate is almost everything in the end still requires a human to be involved to actually go and actually implement some of these ideas. There's certain things that can be automated through the cloud systems, connecting it, but the key thing is getting the right data to the right person at the right time. And that's really the key for how we're going to drive this productivity change over the next 10 years. And it's a really exciting thing for lots of the Western economies where we've all been struggling with productivity challenges compared to the eastern countries in particular. And there's massive changes we can bring into this, and it's not just about allowing the person to do more with the existing amount of time. It's also changing that time. Today, as we bring in smarter and smarter analytics, we also need to make sure we're doing a lot of human user experience design work on how we actually interpret and how we manage that, because it also frees up even more productivity for those technicians to work on. Again, if I focus on my industry, we probably spend today 10 to 15% of every technician's time per year on training them, giving them training on new technologies, training them on the experience of sites, etc. And it can actually take as many as 5 to 10 years for somebody to really get up to speed with how all of these systems work and how they work. But as we get the data to do more and more and actually get down to the real root causes of problems and give them better tools to get better insights into what's there, then we can remove a whole host of that. So you're freeing up another 10 to 15% productivity for each of those technicians. We as a company used to spend a lot of money and time on building training programs and rolling out training courses for all the new products out there. But as I point out to lots of my technicians and our customers today, if I'll happily develop a new training program based on the best out there, which is around Apple. If somebody wants to show me where the iPhone's instruction manual is and where the iPhone's training manual is, because it doesn't exist, because it's all intuitive, and we've got to make sure we're putting as much development work into that user experience, into that insight for what we can do in action the data to pinpoint as quickly as possible where the issues are, where the opportunities are, so those people can work on them without having to constantly be kept trained and up to date. So we've been investing a lot of money in changing the way we do this as well. As all of this stuff has been working, we're also changing industries all over the place with how we design and how we come up with these new ideas. Lots of industries, lots of the traditional industries have focused very much on waterfall development processes, which will take a couple of years to develop a product and get it out there. But that's no longer good to make as much gain on all of this opportunity that's coming. So everybody's been switching to agile methodologies, which also means that we have to have agile methodologies for getting them out there to customers, to keeping people up to date, and making sure that we're not having to constantly train people on new technologies that come out. So a key part of what we need to focus on with IoT is not just the back-end data analytics and insights, but actually how do we get that into the hands of the people so that we can really start making good of it. So just pass over to Suresh now.
Absolutely. So one other thing is, the technologies out there, what technology can do, right? I mean, there is a question, but what we can do with the technology. So we look at, the trend, what is happening is bottom up. The innovation is are happening at home, smart homes are there. People are using these sensors and devices and creating wonderful things, and these are all connected devices. They talk to one another in a hub, and there is a lot of security. I mean, Microsoft is very big on security, and it's we spend tons of money on that. We make sure that the communication is encrypted and secured and things like that. So essentially, if you look at the IBM kind of vision, right? The computers, computers can be sold only to the industry or the big enterprises, but like in Microsoft with Bill Gates' vision is like take pieces to everyone's home, and that happened already. So things, even the people doing the innovations at home can be taken to the industry. So there is no limit to it. I mean, what you can do with the technology, there is no stopping for it. So essentially, that's the discussion that I and Stuart were having. So you can start with, it's very cheap. You can start with less money and have things done. There are framework that are available as well. You don't have to have a use cases that is only be done by the enterprises, but it can be done at the home level as well. So and it makes everyone's life improving, productive, and it is out there. If you don't know, like Microsoft is one of the top 10 GitHub contributor for the open source code. So the world is about open source, and we are opening up. My background, it's like I wasn't on the Microsoft technology before joining there, but I was having the open source background. It's out there, the code's out there. People can take advantage of that and make a lot of innovations. And this thing is also bringing digital transformation to the enterprises. When we look at the devices and the for the enterprises, it is a kind of a different ballgame because they are big on the security, and we are talking about a lot of different things. But that is not going to stop any of us, right? So we can actually start from doing some innovations right from our home itself, right? So we can improve productivity over there as well. I want to pass it on to you.
You have a question?
Oh, so I know you guys all come from 3 different companies. I was just wondering what is a very innovative IoT use case that Microsoft is working on right now that is taking IoT maybe from the home or the enterprise and expanding it.
So, yeah, so something like remote.
Basically, tell me a story.
Yeah. So, Dartmouth, Hitchcock, there is a hospital. With the solution is basically a remote patient monitoring system. So essentially, the patients are classified and they are monitored through systems by the nurses and continuously. And if something were to go wrong, they get an alert and they can actually do, they can call the doctors and get prescriptions and then start doing their prescription right there. So, big on the healthcare. Microsoft is bringing like an industry focus, so they have a segment of retail, finance, healthcare. So, there are a lot of other things as well. There are pre-configured solutions like, the codes are available for, for anybody to play around with, identifying like a predictive maintenance. That's one of the bigger use cases that, we are seeing a lot of companies are showing interest. Essentially you look at like a critical system like an airplane. You want to understand, this engine, what is the probability of failure of this engine, what is the remaining useful life of these particular components, things like that.
Unfortunately, the predictive maintenance on airlines seems to not be happening. It should be happening, but recently talking to Alaska Airlines, it's not happening because they lease the planes, they don't care. It doesn't cost them money when they break, it just costs user experience.
Yeah, so I think you're answering that question. When I look at one of the projects, and I'm going to just tell you projects, our company works on lots of projects. The ones that I probably take most satisfaction working on was working with our warfighter Navy SEALs down at Coronado, and I can just tell you, it's not that they are the best trained. We know everything about physical attributes and blood and every type of chemistry in the world. I'm actually a chemist, and I tell you what, that's something that I think really gets into knowing what people do and how they actually act. And the thing that I really see that can maybe come from that is that people need to really start looking at productivity from the side of, you just can't get, if you think you can really start getting away with less than 7 hours sleep, it is not something to be proud of. I can tell you that. And we need to really start thinking about productivity from the side of taking care of ourselves and the way that we do things at that level. So my final comments before I pass it back over here. What did Henry Ford invent? Anybody know?
The car.
What did he invent?
On the production line.
Model T, well, beyond that. That's something we created from. Who said the production line?
Automation.
Who said the production line? Right here? Hey, there you go. And why did he create the production line?
Make more cars. More cars. Make more cars.
No.
Streamline the process.
All right, so this one might be mine. No. Henry Ford wanted to create a car that everyone who even worked for him could afford. He created a process that drove demand. When we think about the things that do in innovation, hey, think about Steve Jobs, not the Kushner one of that movie. When he got there and he saw his daughter walking out to the car and she had the Walkman in her hand and said, one day I'm going to put 5,000 songs on a device that's that big. He created demand. And that's the key to what you want to do in productivity. How do you create demand? I'm just going to say this to everybody here. How many of you think that robots are going to take over the world? A few people. I'm on the absolute opposite side of the fence because I don't know how robots create demand. If nobody can buy it, where does it go? I mean, I'll even say that about the self-driving car. The only demand a self-driving car is going to do is kids who can't drive and then elderly. Like I said, I already got the self-driving car. I want to know where the demand is going to come from that. It's not just replacement. And that's the thing we need to look at to drive up productivity. That's the question I ask me every day. I mean, I appreciate GitHub and all those kind of things. Anybody do GitHub stuff? All right, I don't do Facebook, I don't do blogs, I don't do GitHub, any of that stuff. And the reason why is If you want what's in here, you're going to pay top dollar for it. I will never give this away for free. And you need to think about that moving forward. Because if you want to live in your parents' basement the rest of your life, go for it. But if you want to have a nice life, have a house, raise kids, and all that good stuff, hey, the most important asset each one of you has is right here. All right, I'm done.
You get yourself a chocolate for that.
Here, what's something? Right here? Good. Well, there you are. Any questions?
Yeah, so the point you raised is very valid. The airlines may not be looking at it, but the manufacturers are doing it. At least I know that we work with the Rolls-Royce, and they have done this.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I still miss my flight because the air conditioning breaks down.
I mean, the final piece I just want to touch upon is where can we take some of this next? Where does it go from here for us to really make good in this productivity? And when you look across the way an organisation works, when you look across all these different industries, we're still working most of them in silos. So again, if I take my industry, the building controls industry, depending which metrics you look at, we're responsible for anything between 40 and 60% of world energy spend of how we're heating, cooling, lighting, all the buildings across the world. And we've got a massive opportunity for us to drive energy savings, drop CO2, just from applying all this new technology. But one of the really exciting things is when we start tying this data into all of the other pieces of data that are there within the building. So lots of analytics that has been led on specific domain analytics, but when you tie it into other pieces, then you can really take this to another level. So just a couple of quick examples. If you look at the way a retail outlet works today, from a heating and a lighting perspective, most of this is done on standards that you're going to keep for most of the year round, about what temperature that building should be. But if you think about yourself in a place such as San Francisco, which goes through relatively cold winters and warm summers and cold summers and warm winters in San Francisco, things are always evolving and changing. And what the smarter companies are now doing is not just looking at building controls in isolation, but looking at them in how it's working with their businesses. So rather than set a temperature that store is now going to stay all year round, what the smarter companies are now doing is tying that data into till receipts, tying that data into footfall information. And so the smarter companies now know the temperature that store should be every different month of the year in every different part of the world. Because when you're in the middle of winter, you're walking around in a warm jacket, you walk into a store where the staff are still wearing the same short sleeve shirts as they wear during the summer, and they've got the temperature up the same temperature it was all year round. You're hot, you're sweaty, you're uncomfortable, and you don't stay. You end up leaving a lot sooner. So what the company is now doing is really tying it into that user experience, so that this is dynamically changing. So during winter, the temperature is actually much lower in the store than it would be traditionally, which is saving energy because you're not heating those stores as much, but you're also making sure it's a better environment for the users coming in there. And that's all taken by tying into all of these other pieces of information. You can do that across a whole host of different applications. So that's one key thing I'd get us to really focus on is how do we enable that productivity. And again, companies spend a lot of money on real estate these days, and it's not necessarily tied into the way you actually work yourself with businesses. So we spend a lot of time heating buildings and lighting buildings that may not actually need to be being used, but at the same time we're not actually tracking what's happening to the people going across there. So in a campus facility like a university or some of the larger companies which have big campuses, you can spend quite a lot of time going from building to building for meetings rather than optimising where those people should be, both from a time perspective, so you're not having people travelling around as much, but also that you're then tying into the underlying systems and you're not unnecessarily heating and cooling buildings and lighting them when you shouldn't be. So you're tying all of this data together really then drives a whole other level of productivity. And when you actually capture the value from this is how you really then start to enable the business cases, but then for creating more and more services and offerings to actually make good on this promise. So I'll just pass on to Suresh for the final bit.
Yeah, so for I was talking about the next thing of the IoT is the edge analytics. because that's where you can the meeting of different kinds of technologies. You can have the AI, you can have advanced analytics done there. So with the data that is there, the problem with the big data is like the data where it is created and where the compute is done are two different places. So that's creating a lot of headache, and you got to move the data where the compute is, or move the compute where the data is. So that's been a problem. So with this edge analytics, right when the sensors or the devices where the data is generated, you can do analytics right then and there, and you can actually tie that with the advanced analytics, and you can do with the cognitive, APIs out there, like you can do with, if it's going to generate some images, you can have it like a computer vision, or it's going to create some voice, you can have something on that as well, and you can have chat bots and things like that can sit between the service and the and where the data is, right? So you can do a whole lot of things. So that's what Microsoft is heavily investing in edge analytics. And if you look at edge analytics, there are kind of one where it is the manufacturer puts the intelligence or the software into their devices while they're manufacturing the component itself, or you can actually have the device and then you can add an SDK to it, and then in that case, that's what the Microsoft Edge Analytics is basically. With the hardware, you can actually use an SDK. You can choose a platform. You can choose your language and things like that. It gives you the whole broad kind of the flexibility that you can choose to develop with and create services out of that. So that's what I believe that next thing in IoT is going to be.
Right, any answers? Any questions? Yes, go.
Yeah, I have.
My question is for Suresh. So could you talk about more about Microsoft's solutions and technology on edge analytics? For instance, how do you deliver models and SQ models on the edge devices, and also to bring the data to the edge devices for execution?
Okay. There are different kinds of things you can do with edge devices. Like essentially, there is an SDK that you can download it from Microsoft. It's called the Gateway SDK or the Edge, so that you can actually have the cloud coming into the Edge through Azure IoT Hub. So you can actually, the device is not capable of some of the protocol that like MQTT or AMQP. You can do protocol translations right there, and then you can actually send the data to the IoT Hub in the cloud, and that is Azure IoT Hub. Also, you can actually use these, develop the code using like C, JavaScript, or Java, or C#, and you can actually format it or translate or do data cleansing for that matter, and then send it to the cloud as well.
Any more questions?
So where can I find a list of all the IoT devices that are there in the market and how to be used?
I don't think there is like a whole, one place where you can go and find all the IoT devices. Basically, you can actually, there are pre-configured solutions that work with certain devices, and there are, like a certified devices on Azure IoT, so that you can find it. But I don't think it's that you can find like one place for all the devices.
Yeah, go to our national labs and look through DOE, and you'll see just about everything you're talking about.
Which labs did you say?
All of them. Pacific Northwest National Lab, Sandia, Oak Ridge,
Okay.
Los Alamos, all of them are doing work in that right now. They have a list of what they're doing and how they're doing it.
So what I mean to say that is in the regular industry or businesses, there's a lot of confusion about how do we use IoT, what are these devices, how can I use it, and I don't find a lot of information which can be.
That's the #1 device.
Okay.
Right there. mean, there's more sensors in this than you can imagine.
But I'm sure that device is not connected to the windmill that he was talking about. So there are a lot of devices that are directly providing data to the big data. And I had one more question for Suresh, that when you bring devices to the windmill kind of place, which has analytics built in it, does the device use big data for the analytics, or it's not? It's just smart and it just knows.
Yeah, so you can do batching there. You can do batching right as when the data is created. You can use the edge analytics for batching that, but that's not where you do the big data. So that's like kind of like a heavy backend process that you can do with the with the HD inside. You can actually do that, or with machine learning. You can actually do that, but that will be a backend process.
So these devices are not really reducing the volume of data going to the big data.
You can filter the data that is going into the cloud by looking at what is getting created, whether it is relevant to what you are looking at, right? Like for machine learning, when you create a model, like Stuart touched upon it as well as John. So you should know what you're looking for. Like, in this case, like windmill failure, I'm looking for any, the maintenance data and the device health status or the component status, like bearing, things like that, right? So once we know what we're looking for, we're going to filter out other things and send only things.
So is that filtering done at the device itself?
At the edge, yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you, speakers, for that interesting discussion.